My name is Spiro Cheriogotis. I'm running for mayor. I'm a former judge, former prosecutor, and happy to be here.
Man, I think this is going to be fun, and I am so excited about having you here. I think really thank you for making yourself available, and I'm excited about this.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate you carving out some time to sit down with me.
Absolutely. Well, this is a standard on the podcast. We want to hear a little bit about you. They don't care about me. They want to hear some backstory. You know, did you grow up here? Where'd you go to high school? You obviously went to college.
I did.
Where'd you go to college? Are you married? Kids? You know, some of the backstory, just because some people may not have any idea who you are.
Well, I'm not from here. I don't know if you knew that. I'm from Dothan, Alabama. Okay. So it's kind of the dry corner of South Alabama. We weren't too far from the beach or lakes and spent a lot of time doing that. Went to Northview High School. I have a barbecue restaurant that my dad opened, and I now have that's actually right next to my old high school.
Okay.
And we went there a few weeks back, took the team and fed them some of our award-winning ribs. And I'm a pork guy. I like a regular pork sandwich. But what else? I am married to my wife, Lucy Greer on TV, Lucy Cheriogotis at home.
Very good.
You did ask me, how do you pronounce your last name? So we've got some cards, and we put a pronunciation key.
Right.
So like even Spiro is not obvious. I get Spiro. I get Shapiro a lot. Like that happened more after the OJ case.
Yeah.
You know, Robert Shapiro was the attorney, and I started getting a lot of Shapiros after that. But
I was thinking more of Ben Shapiro, but yeah.
Yeah, well, he's come along the scene since then. But yeah, so my first name is Spiro, like a spear through an O, and Cheriogotis. I explained that it's a Greek name. Both of them are Greek names. If you picture a Greek goddess, you take her and you sit her in a chair. You chair a goddess.
Yeah, Cheriogotis.
Cheriogotis.
Yeah. Once you say it, it's not difficult. It's just you don't want to. I didn't want to screw it up.
It's got a lot of vowels in there, and I think Ellis Allen kind of added an extra vowel or two in there, but
no, it's cool.
We're running with it.
Barbecue restaurant. I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to that and just park there for a second.
I got 4 kids too. They're wonderful.
Very good. Yeah. And where did you go to college?
Went to Alabama. So left.
Good.
Born and raised in Dothan. Roll Tide. Went to undergrad at Alabama. Got a biology and chemistry degree, and then was actually going to go to med school. And truly, the Lord redirected my life.
Yeah.
All things were good. I was headed to med school, had taken the entrance exam, done well. I was actually interviewing here at South. And I don't know if you've ever had that time in your life where like everything feels like it should be going great and you should be excited and happy and everything's good, but you're not.
Yeah.
And it was just like
heading in the wrong direction.
Internally, I just knew that the path I was on was not right.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of prayer, and I'm hard-headed, and the Lord was very clear with me, and I heard one word, and it was law, and kind of like the next 10 years of my life flashed before my eyes, and saw myself going, getting to law school, speaking in front of an auditorium, speaking in front of, arguing to a jury, and I didn't see the judge thing, but I've lived all that. So anyway, my life was redirected to law school, and truly wasn't sure I was going to be able to get into Alabama. It was very difficult at the time to get in. Their requirements were high, and I got in.
They accepted Jonathan McConnell. I mean, if they'll accept him, they'll accept anybody, right?
I mean, that guy filled out his application in a tent in Afghanistan. So
I tell you what, I know
he's got my respect. He's a good friend. Way.
Yeah. Did you guys go? Were you there at the same time?
We were same class. We had like your first year, you have sections, so we were in different sections, and we actually kind of bonded by having like dinner parties, and we would watch that show 24.
Okay, yeah, that's
together.
Great. With Keanu. No, not Keanu. Kiefer Sutherland. The other K.
Yeah. So it was still live and going on, and he became really good friends with one of our mutual friends from Dothan, John Givens. And John used to host us and Grant Amy and our crew, and we'd watch 24 and hang out.
No, that's cool.
And so we became friends that way, and then shortly after we became friends, he started the Maersk, Alabama was kidnapped by pirates, taken over by pirates, and Well, in the middle of law school, he created a multinational, multi-million-dollar business, and
That's just Jonathan.
I
Is it Tuesday or
he
Wednesday?
could truly do anything.
Yeah, I know. I've really enjoyed. We were in emerging leaders together at the chamber, and I've really enjoyed getting to know him and be his friend.
Yeah.
And he certainly has plenty of good connections too. Not that I'm ever like that's not. He's just a nice guy, and for him to have done as much as he has and not be as full of himself, because he's not. He does not care. He's a Marine.
He's a Marine, and I don't know that he and Warren Buffett have that many traits that they share, other than they're very successful. But I always think of Warren Buffett when I think of him, because it's not going to ever matter how much money he makes or what he does, all these amazing things he's doing. He's going to be humble. Jonathan McConnell living in a little reasonable home.
Yeah, he just wants to spend time with his boy.
Look, if Tommy's around, he's happy.
Yeah.
And he, with the busyness of his life, the way he carves out time to make sure he spends it with Tommy is a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, he's a master at scheduling his life, that's for sure.
He's got a schedule.
Well, I find that a person's first job kind of shapes them. And so I want you to think back to what your first job was. Tell us, a little bit about it. And are there any lessons that you remember from that?
Oh, man. Well, you're hitting me home right there. But I clearly remember my first job. I remember my title that I gave myself, which was warehouse manager. But I was working for my dad and granddad. They had a vending and catering business.
Okay.
So industrial vending and catering. So every factory within about 50 miles of Dothan had our Coke machines, snack machines, coffee machines, sandwich machines. There's probably some other ones I'm missing in there.
Yeah.
But for the larger factories, we would have lunch lines that we would serve breakfast, lunch, dinner, just, full service when it came to food. And I started working, I was there at the business hanging out from the age of 4, 3 and 4. But I really started working when I was 9. And we were in this little shopping center at the time, right next to a baseball card shop, which really was bad for my savings account.
All the money goes from here to here.
It didn't even make it home.
Yeah.
But I called myself warehouse manager, which meant I swept. I took out the trash. I did check in some inventory, when the trucks would come. And so we'd have a room, full of chips, full of every, snack you can imagine, Cokes, drinks. And then we had a cool room, which I would hide in the summer, but it had all the candy bars and pastries and all the other things we sold. So
no, that's really cool.
it was great. And to answer the question, what did I learn? I don't know that I've learned more at any job ever than I did at VinServe. And it was really from my dad. I jokingly say he was the worst boss I ever had, but he was certainly the most demanding boss I ever had.
Right.
And back then I made $5 a day. I was rich. And I would sweep. I'd get out in the warehouse. We have all these pallets, and you really kind of got to get in between them and around them. And I remember I'd sweep the first time, and he'd come in, walk through. He says, "Is this the best you can do?" And I'd say, "Maybe." And he's like, "Well, I see this, this, and this, and this, and this." So I'd sweep it all again. He'd come out, "Is this the best you can do?" And I'd say, "Yes." And he'd say, "Well, what about that? What about that? What about that?" And so, of course, I'd clean it again until it was fully clean to his standards.
Yeah.
But what he taught me was to, do your best job the first time.
Yeah.
Work hard every time. And, if you're going to say something's your best, it better be your best.
Right.
And
pay attention to the details.
Boy.
Yeah.
And he taught me that. I treasure those times. And, really back then, Dad ran the business. My granddad at the time, he had really helped build the business. And, his parents immigrated to America, re-immigrated to Greece. He came back to America after World War II. Long story, but nobody's ever worked harder than my granddad. He used to run, 3 and 4 restaurants and lounges at the same time in Birmingham mainly, working 22 hours a day, killing himself for the fam.
It's a different generation.
I don't think we appreciate how hard some of those people had to work to make a life in this country. But he really built the business alongside my dad. My dad started taking over pretty quickly. And by the time I was 9, Dad was running everything. Papa would just have his buddies over for breakfast every day.
Right.
You know, I remember him sitting in his office making phone calls to his buddies in Greece.
Yeah.
And I'd just sit in there and listen to him speaking in Greek. And my favorite thing is he would always inevitably hit some word that he didn't know the Greek word for. So it'd be like, you know,
how do you say?
Yeah. You go, tractor trailer. Because, of course, his buddy spoke perfect English.
Yeah.
I
hadn't planned on asking you this because I didn't know this about you, but my father's Brazil.
Oh, okay.
And I find that there's something very different in the life experience of someone who has such a close relationship with somebody from another country.
Yeah.
Like I think even earlier today, I called my dad, and he almost couldn't get out of Portuguese.
Yeah.
You know, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, Dad, English, you know, please, you know, and, you know, he switches. And then there's also just something like, hey, you know, I have such an appreciation for the life that I have, the freedoms that are, you know, given to me and the opportunities, because, you know, I know that had I been born in Brazil, I would not have had those same options.
And
right.
I think it's so easy to forget that. You know, we live in America, you know, it has its faults, but I think it's the best country in the world. There is nowhere where you can experience more freedom, you know, more ability to rise, you know, based on your own hard work and effort. It truly is open for business for everyone. And yes, you'll face struggles. You own a business. It's never going to be smooth sailing all the time.
No, it's usually not.
It's often not.
Yeah.
You know, of course, I read this book. It tells me to enjoy the trials, enjoy the difficulties, because they're building me up. They're strengthening me into the man that I need to be. But yeah, so like Papa, just to tell you a little bit about his life, his father and mother met they lived on opposite ends of Greece. He came to her island, which was essentially in Turkey, to help build a church.
Wow.
And they met, fell in love, decided to immigrate together to America through Ellis Island, and made their way down to Birmingham. Okay. A lot of Greeks in Birmingham. You know, every Greek has a cousin, you know, and
it's like the Italians in New York, you know?
For sure. So, you know, my great grandfather was building a life here and died very suddenly. He had a kidney issue, went in the hospital. 4 days later, he was gone. This was 1920, well, right at 1930. Let me think about it.
Right before the Depression.
Like 32, 30, 32. And so Granddad was born in 26. And I think he was 6 when his dad died, so 32.
Yeah.
And back then, like, women didn't work, you know. And so my great-grandmother, Maria, was here with 2 children. My grandfather, his sister's name is Angelula, which I've never heard that name other than hers, but she was sweet, knew her for many years. So they had to go back to Greece where they had family and support. And actually, Mr. Malbus, you know, old man Malbus, at Malbus Farms, showed my grandfather his first olive tree, helped them get on a boat with a lot of other Greeks going back to Greece. And, you know, so we've got that connection here. They re-immigrate to Greece, drop my aunt off in Italy with an aunt. And by the time the boat gets from Italy to Greece, Italy has declared war on Greece. Hitler has invaded Poland. World War II is kicked off. And so my grandfather at the time, I believe he was about 12, 13 when they got back to Greece. And so they're living in wartime Greece. And of course the Italians try to invade, they're repelled. Yeah. Hitler sends his war machine down, they win easily. My grandfather's got stories of like throwing rocks at Nazi, you know, generals and getting shot at as a teenager in the hills of Athens.
That's amazing.
Incredible, you know, and really the Nazis' strategy was to starve the Greeks, and they did. And many, you know, watching that level of poverty and need and death and destruction.
That's a common ploy, right? I mean, yeah, because it's amazing how you can bend somebody's will when, you know, they're starving for scraps.
You know, when you're starving, you'll do a lot to survive. You know, it's truly survival. Anyway, after Hitler leaves, communists attempt to take over. Papa is able, because he's a citizen, born in America, he's able to get on a boat, come back to New York. They immediately sign him up for the military.
Okay.
He joins the army and
then goes back.
goes to Italy. He was actually slated to go to the Eastern Front, like Germany, because the war is over at this point.
Okay.
Occupation forces.
Yeah.
And his buddy like helps him switch where he's going, so he gets to go to Italy.
Okay.
He fully speaks Italian. I can't believe they wouldn't have sent him there anyway. But finds his sister after 7 years of never, not knowing if she's alive.
Yeah.
No communications. Anyway, eventually gets back to America, makes enough money to bring them both back home, meets my grandmother in New York, moves back to Birmingham. A lot of story after that.
No, it's really cool.
But that kind of struggle,
yeah,
we just don't know that.
No.
If you're born and raised in America, you've never experienced generally anything like that. I do think there are some people in some communities that are living that, and we need to recognize that, and we need to pour help and resources into those communities. But just listening to Pop, I feel like I understand.
Yeah.
Even though I've never
experienced it. It's a vastly different time for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Not to skip around too much, but I usually ask people, because I think this is more a question for me. Are there any books, podcasts, people, or organizations that have been helpful in moving you forward in your career and all the things that you've been involved in? Yeah. Aside from this, ignore the campaign.
One book that I read fairly recently is Simon Sinek. It's The Infinite Game. I don't know if you read that, but
is that his latest one? Because he's been making
there's
rounds.
Also Finding Why, which I've read a good bit about that.
Yeah.
I've read a good bit of that one too. But it really talks about business and like government. There's no way to win, right? Like there's no clear end point. Like in a baseball game, when the third out in the ninth inning, that's it. Game's over. Whatever the score is, that's the winner. For business and government, the goal has to be constant improvement.
Yep.
Continually improving the
There's
outcomes.
no end.
It doesn't end. And so you got to set that goal of constant improvement, and not really finite goals, but infinite goals.
It's interesting. He's been making the rounds on some podcasts lately, and I was listening to one, but he didn't get into that. So that's an interesting take.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I often point to startup communities as well. I don't know if you've read that one. It's not by Simon Sinek, and I can't remember who the author is. It's over there. After we get finished, I'll show it to you. But it's about it's about how government and higher education and business work together in order to foster a startup community, similar to what we have with Innovation Portal.
Yeah.
And I read that, probably a decade ago, and, before Innovation Portal was, started and stuff like that. And anyway, it's just a very interesting take on, how all those relationships, kind of work together.
Yeah.
So,
which, in the perfect scenario, they are working together.
Correct.
They're working in the same direction.
Yeah.
And look, we have all those puzzle pieces right here in Mobile.
We do. It doesn't seem, or it doesn't feel like we do at times. It's not, I don't think it's unheard of to say that, like, I sometimes forget that we have so many colleges in this town.
4.
Exactly. And it's
4.
And it just blows my mind that, I don't know, it just never, like, I've been in college towns before, and it just doesn't feel that way. And I don't, I think of, I went to James Madison, so Harrisonburg, Virginia, or UVA and
Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, or Tuscaloosa, or and any other. It just has a feel, and it doesn't have that same feel.
Yeah, so, I do think it. Based on the geographic location of our colleges, they're not really interspersed with downtown and kind of like nightlife. So I do agree with you. It doesn't really have that college town feel.
Yeah.
Although I'd love to
see that happen. Yeah, see that happen a little bit.
Maybe we can get some more college kids living downtown.
That would be good.
Support a few more businesses,
or integrate the colleges downtown in some way and get that kind of synergy. I know there's been a lot of talk about that. So
yeah, I'll throw one more book out there: Meditations.
Okay.
Marcus Aurelius.
Very good.
Really good stuff.
Yeah, I only hear good things about going back and reading those, but I just can't. I don't know. I just can't do it?
You know, that one's hard because it was not written to be published. It was just
His thoughts
this
on
one of the few good Roman emperors writing down his thoughts for himself, really. And so it doesn't read like, it doesn't have a story feel to it, and it's almost like Proverbs, like kind of broken up. But
I don't know. I may have to check that out because it's the bite-sized thing kind of intrigues me. Because I don't feel like it would have to be something that you'd have to like sit down and read all the way through. But you know, hey, I'm just want to get a quick bite, of something. So
his family doesn't get any royalties, so you don't have to feel bad about just like going online and getting like the best quotes out of it.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Well, I have to ask. I mean, being a judge is a huge achievement. So I have to ask the question of like making the decision to like leave all that behind and do something like this. Like, what was the motive behind? What was the thinking behind making that decision?
You know, you kind of have your heart and your brain,
right?
And for me, I'm a man of faith, and it really boiled down to that. But one thing is, I've been so enamored, frankly, by the amount of progress and the positivity I've seen throughout Mobile and during Sandy Stimpson's time.
Yeah.
I moved here from law school about 3 years before he was elected for the first time, and I remember the excitement of his campaign, this message of unity.
Mobile's momentum.
Mobile and momentum, and I've seen that momentum. Of course, my wife's family is in the grocery business, and they bought into the momentum, and we got 2 grocery stores downtown.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting in my office when at the courthouse, looking out onto downtown when that announcement came through that Sandy was not going to run again, and I just thought, oh no, what are we going to do? We've got to continue this progress. We have to see these things through. Who's going to do it?
Right.
And that really led to me making some phone calls and trying to figure out who was going to do it.
Yeah.
Because I saw it just as critical for the future of the city, that this momentum continue. And I kept running up dry, and I'd say, oh, well, this person said they were considering it. I'd call them, and they were out.
Yeah.
And I did that about 5 or 6, 10 times, and really it was like scratching my head, and I said, oh no, like, Lord, are you talking to me?
It's like everybody has a weird person in their friend group, and if you don't have a weird person in your friend group, you're the weird person.
Yeah.
Well, if nobody's running, but you're the one asking the questions, does that mean that you're the one that's running?
I saw it as so critical and important, and then I started, and for me personally, it made no sense.
Yeah.
I've just secured another term as judge. I love my job.
Judges have how many years?
6-year terms.
Okay, 6-year terms. So I mean, yeah.
I had just been reelected.
And the chances of you losing an election once you're elected.
Well, nobody ran against me.
I mean, like, so essentially, this is a job that you almost can have as long as you want. And judgeship is like, I mean, it's got to be a good position.
Oh, it filled me up in so many ways. Yeah. I mean, you do. I will say, like, I was taking on more of the hardships and heartaches of the world than I realized.
I can see that. Yeah.
I feel for people, and I really, it affects me when people are. Heck, I almost started crying earlier at a press conference because the mother of a young man who was killed that I prosecuted the case was in the audience, and we kind of locked eyes while I was talking about the pain that I've seen in my courtroom and in courtrooms that are the result of gun violence, and I choked up right there, but held it together. But being a judge is wonderful. It's a blessing I never expected to have in my life. I truly felt blessed to have that job, and I saw change happen. Oftentimes small. You're not gonna, not everybody that comes to court is looking to totally turn their life around.
Right.
And until someone makes that determination, that decision to truly change, you're just, you're climbing a hill that can't be climbed. But I saw people make that decision, and I saw people change, and I saw good things happening. Truly, have people tell you saved my life, and the answer is no, you did.
Yeah.
You did. I might have
pushed you in the right direction.
The pathway. I might
yeah.
have given you some good suggestions, but you chose it. So it was wonderful. I love my job. I do miss it. But the truth of a judge is you're always reacting. The thing has already happened.
Right.
You know, the life is already, the course is
You're picking up the pieces of, you know, yeah.
So trying to glue things back together as best you can and protect people as best you can. And the thing that excites me about mayor is you can be so proactive.
Yeah.
You can really identify the areas of need and pour resources and time and energy into those areas and see widespread change. You know, not just one life, not just one life plus their family, but entire neighborhoods, entire communities, hopefully an entire city. I just saw it as such an opportunity. And frankly, we're in such a good financial position. I truly feel like there's so much less division in this city than there once was. Mm-hmm. I feel like we're in such a great position, truly on the cusp of realizing our full potential as a city.
Yeah.
And, you know, making it feel like a college town might be part of that. And
well, you said a word, and it's that potential word that just drives me insane. And everybody always talks about Mobile being the city of perpetual potential. And it's the reason why we started this podcast. Yeah. And I don't know, please don't say, but this podcast has been going for 6 years and well over 200 plus episodes. And, you know, like, I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, but like, I want to pour positive into the city. There are so many outlets for negative.
Right.
And so, you know, when somebody sits here, like I want to show the positive things that a business owner is doing, or share the trials that they're going through, but how they've overcome those, and, you know, things like that. And so, but I hate, you know, that everybody kind of still clings to that city of perpetual potential, because there's a self-fulfilling prophecy that goes along with that, right?
Yes.
And if you look back at where we have come over the last 10 years, it's absolutely ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I mean, the amount of, job growth that has happened here, and the amount of notoriety, and the amount of, you know, increase in just about every aspect of our living has gotten better.
And
you know, I mean, there's certain things.
Doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
Crime has fallen off a cliff as well.
Yeah. And I actually have a question about that I'll get. Actually, that's next. You know, that, crime is something that everybody's concerned about. It's something that everybody's talking about, especially, you know, we just had the shooting at the Sanger Theater that, you know, I mean, I just can't think of anything more horrific than being at a kids event and, you know, having that happen, right? There's just no excuse. So do you see violence as a symptom of a larger problem? Or do you see, and I think with your experience as a judge, like that you have a unique viewpoint on that, do you see violence as a symptom of a larger problem, or do you see violence and all of that crime as just the problem?
No, I think it is generally a symptom of a larger problem. You know, it's hard to identify the exact problem.
Well,
but
I'm not gonna say anything other than, see, my viewpoint is that when the economy goes down and people are struggling, that violence and crime is going to go up, right?
But and so some people will say, on that same vein, that poverty is the ultimate driver of crime. Mm-hmm. But I've seen many people live a life of poverty and never turn to crime. I've seen poverty create drive and determination and good things in people to strive, succeed. I mean, my grandfather, you know, like to fight and strive and struggle and gain and find increase. So to me, hopelessness is really the main driving force for crime.
I got you.
When you don't hope you don't have any hope or belief or a vision for a pathway for you to find increase, success, wealth, you know, improvement in your life's conditions. Yeah.
You're going to react on
that's when you turn to, well, like, hey, all I need is a gun and I can get this guy's wallet. You know, I can do this, I can do that. So the hopelessness, I do think, is really the common factor, and that's a condition of the heart most of the time. Yeah. You know, I'm a man of faith, and so I always have hope in a brighter future, and I see pathways that we can have a brighter future, not just for the yous and me's of the world, but for everybody. And so poverty is a symptom. It is an issue to be fought against, and to try and show increase and increase people's ability to seize that opportunity and find it. I don't see it as the driving force. I think it is, like causation doesn't equal correlation, doesn't equal causation.
Yeah.
And so I think it's unfair to those people who have grown up in a world of poverty and have never turned to that life and have succeeded, have improved, to say that, well, if you're impoverished, you can't do anything. That's your only option. That's just not true.
Yeah,
it might seem like your only option, but that's not true.
Yeah, as you're speaking, I'm thinking of a conversation, and for his sake, I won't go into details, but I'm thinking of a conversation with a man that I know who has come, when I look at his life and where he came from, he is light years away from where he was.
Yep.
And it has caused some strife with people from his past, including his family.
Yeah.
And what he realized was that it's unfair of him to expect them to behave any differently, because if they knew any better, they would have taught him, because you assume that a mom loves their child, and she would have taught him a better way of living, but she didn't, because she didn't know any better.
She didn't know it.
She didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And so he's having to go back and say, you know what, like, as much of a pain in the butt as this is, I'm going to help and try to teach this person how to communicate at a different level, so that we can have a relationship and we can mend these fences. And so I'm just left thinking that there's not some parallel here to those that find themselves in a hopeless situation of like, well, I just don't know that they're like, I don't know that path. Yeah. And I think they look to people in the city, and I love when I see folks going into like the different school systems and stuff like that, especially the successful entrepreneurs that these kids look up to.
Yes.
Because, like, what's the other option? The drug dealer that lives down the street?
He seems to be successful, right? He's got a nice car.
Right.
He's got money.
I mean, I don't know. So I'm waxing poetic now.
Well, no, but I think you're hitting on what I think we all have a purpose on this earth. I think we're all born with that purpose. And I think generally everyone's purpose is not to help themselves, but to help others. Yeah. In some way, it relates to helping others. I think that's the only true pathway to happiness, is by giving of yourself to others.
100%. My spiritual gifting is an educator, and so even this, it's like, this is an educational moment for me. They just get to watch. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts around crime, though? What is there anything there that you've kind of put out as like, hey, this is what I think about doing?
Look, I'm not going to talk too much about police strategies, but those are there. Yeah. There are ways that we can reevaluate what we're doing with our current police force. Do we need to add some to that? Probably. Yeah. But I think there are things we can do with our current resources to really highlight and target youth gun violence, because that's the most random. It is committed by young men almost exclusively between the ages of 14 and 24, and they haven't even reached the age of mental maturity. Yeah. A young man's brain doesn't fully form. Prefrontal cortex. Well, maybe for you and me. But no, 25 to 28. That's when that prefrontal cortex starts winning out over other portions of the brain, the more impulsive portions. And I've seen many young men who did come up in that way of life and did engage in gun violence and other things, and they grew out of it. Yeah. A lot of times that was after a stint in prison, or something else, or they've become injured themselves and stop engaging in that way of life. But I've seen young men grow out of it, become men, real men, and build a new life for themselves that is good and productive and good for their society and community. And, frankly, I was a young man once. I didn't make the most wise decisions. No, we
all have those, yeah.
I'm blessed that, none of those bad decisions I've made in my life like permanently affected the course of my life, but that is happening with a lot of young men. And so for one, I think the best thing that we can do to really attack gun violence is to pour into young men and young women, and show them that there is a clear pathway to success. I don't care what world you're growing up in. I don't care how bad home life is. If you will stick with me, if you will make it a 10th grade and let me get you in a dual enrollment program so that you can graduate high school with the ability to, have your electrician certificate, HVAC, plumbing, welding, and you can make $60,000 debt free straight out of school. That's life-changing money.
Yeah. Truly
life-changing money, and that's just the start. And, I know that's a real pathway to success. I use this example, but, I went to college, and of course that is one route to potential success. It's also a route to a lot of student debt and difficulty, but I have a biology degree. I was going to go to med school. It qualifies me to substitute teach maybe. Thank you to all the substitute teachers out there, but that's my 4-year degree. My friend, who I really had to tutor and get through high school, school was not easy for him. He went straight into plumbing and electrical. He now has, 2 houses that are paid for. A boat, I don't even have a boat. He's got 2. He's doing great, right? His balance sheet is better than mine. And not only did I go to college, I went to law school too. So that's a real avenue to wealth and success. And I don't know that message is said enough. And frankly, here in Mobile, we need more welders. We need more electricians. Like we are building all the time. We've got, between Austal and Airbus, they probably hire 5,000 welders today if they could. So, there's a need in our community, but just from the business aspect, but that's a real pathway to success. And yes, we need to make sure they can get there. We need to make sure we're supporting our food pantries, our mentorship programs, our community centers that provide young people a healthy and good place to learn and play and have fun. So there are a lot of things, there are a lot of needs there, but I don't see problems. I see opportunities for solutions, and I see a lot of opportunities for real solutions.
I think sometimes, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like sometimes we make these problems bigger than what they. I think you understand what I'm saying.
People have that, tendency to say, well, I can't because, and just leave it at that. Well, I could never do that because of this. Like I'll tell you right now, I haven't seen anybody who truly focused on a goal and who truly gave it their all that didn't get there.
Right. It's the not having goals and not working towards it that finds people just languishing in their own situation.
So yesterday I was at Dumas Wesley, and Dumas Wesley's, they have a lot of fantastic programs. One program is they take homeless families, and there are 18 units there, and they provide them a place to live. It's not like for 3 months, it's for 2 years. But there's a program attached to that, and it is life skills, and they teach them all kind of wonderful things. But one of the recent graduates, this is hearsay, but one of the recent graduates said, I love having goals. I've never had goals in my life. And so not just having them, but being able to tick that check mark and say, achieved.
That's
done.
A huge thing.
Next, what's next? And that's just something that not every parent teaches. Not every school teaches that. Have goals, set goals. Think about your life. And if this one thing was different, your life would be this much better. What is it? Okay, let's go after that. And
having that goal keeps them on a path. That's definitely a more positive path than what they could be going down.
Upward.
So the median income, I'm going to switch gears here a little bit, talking about business or economic development, but the median income in Mobile hovers around 50,000, 51,000 or so. The national median income is roughly 80,000. We've seen a huge increase in the number of businesses that are moving here between Austal and the steel plant, which I'm not even going to try.
Not TK, AM&S, Calvert.
And then, there's even today, I think the chamber sent out an email that said that Kimberly Clark was investing another $130 million in the plant here and stuff like that. There's a lot of investment in Mobile. And from my understanding, unemployment is also very low. Now, I would say that I don't know, I haven't looked at the numbers enough to say whether unemployment is low because people have just left and aren't trying to find jobs or whatever. But what can be done to get that $50,000 up? Because the impact of that would be so significant from the standpoint of, everybody always bitches about, well, there's nothing fun to do here in Mobile. We've got Top Golf now. We've got Dave and Buster's. We've got all these things that are coming here.
New arena is going to be pretty great.
Yeah, the new arena. But the problem is that there's no disposable income for people to enjoy these things,
which limits their ability to come here and invest here. So, no, I think that's a very real issue. And, look, we've got Austal and Airbus. They're paying pretty well. A lot of people would say we need more white collar jobs.
Yeah, I mean,
but there are plenty of blue collar jobs paying more. Well, certainly more than I'm getting paid right now. Yeah. But I do think that's true. I think the airport's really going to help with that. I think we can attract more higher paying jobs to our city. I think there's a ton of fun things to do in Mobile, frankly.
Yeah.
Where else can you be like on a fishing boat in 10 minutes or soon going to an arena level concert? Where else can you, go to the home of Mardi Gras and sit there and watch people throw free stuff at you for,
and try not to get beamed in the head.
You gotta keep your head on the swivel. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Those beads, those big beads. Oof.
I'm well aware.
But no, I think we got a wonderful city. But one thing that I think we can do and what we have to do is, even though we have Airbus creating jobs, Austal creating jobs, the steel plant, we are not connecting those jobs well enough to our citizens. Okay. A lot of those jobs are going to people that live across the bay, out in the county, south of Mobile. We have to make sure, if we're going to fully realize the benefit of the 5,000 jobs, 6,000 jobs, I always do this, 6,000 jobs we expect to add over the next 5 years.
Okay.
They need to be worked by our citizens, Mobile citizens. And so, yes, higher paying jobs can help that, but if you take somebody from zero, unemployed to fully employed, that's going to increase that number just as quick,
100%.
Quicker.
Yeah.
And so one issue, the chamber did a study last year, I believe, maybe 2 years ago now, that of unemployed individuals living in our city, and 31% said that the lack of reliable transportation was their number one hurdle to being employed. And I saw that as a judge. I saw people that didn't have a ride, so they had to pay Uber, about a quarter of their monthly income just to get down here to go to court. That's unsustainable. When we've got people living just down Broad Street that, it's going to take them 2 hours on our current public transportation system to get to the middle of Mobile or even downtown Mobile. They can walk faster than they can get here on a bus half the time. Yeah. That's a problem. And I get really tired of people pointing fingers and blaming.
Who cares?
Let's just fix it.
Yeah.
Let's find the
just
solution.
Because it's been some way.
I'm not saying it's the transit workers' fault, the company's fault. I don't care whose fault it is. Frankly, let's fix it.
Yeah. I heard the mayor say at one point in time, he was like, I think we could probably buy cars for everybody that uses the bus system and still save a lot of money, because it was like $8 million or something like that.
We put out 10, we get about $1 million back, so 9. But
no. He may not be wrong.
He may not be wrong, but to me, like, to really be a flourishing city, and Mobile is a big small city. Yeah, I love that about it. But when you're talking about it doesn't feel like a college town, well, a lot of the college kids up at South Alabama don't have vehicles. Mm-hmm. How are they going to come enjoy the nightlife on Dothan Street or anywhere else downtown if they don't have a ride? And it's been a while since I tried to get an Uber, but the last few times I did, there were maybe 6 on the road.
Yeah, it's not exactly a plethora of Ubers around. So.
I don't know why that decreased, and it was a great asset. But now we've got the MOGO program through the chamber, and I think that you're going to see that increase, and I would call it subsidized Uber, for lack of a better term. But if all of a sudden, instead of these massive buses doing these long and winding routes, if we had some smaller buses that maybe were trolleys, right? Trolleys, to me, if you think of like old New Orleans, Mobile, we used to have trolleys. Charleston, trolleys kind of harken back to, a good time, a better time certainly for public transportation.
Sure.
And it can be fun. I think it would add to the vibe and character of our city. And all of a sudden, it's a real option for a kid at South Alabama who wants to go down to Heroes and have watch a game with his friends and or go out on the town for the night and not have to worry about driving home, which would be unsafe. And boy, if we decrease DUIs and increase money spent around our restaurants and bars, that sounds good to me.
Yeah, for sure.
So public transportation is something that I'm really honed in on. If I can activate 31% of our workforce who's not working just by providing them reliable, reasonable transportation, like why are we not doing that?
That seems like a low-hanging fruit kind of situation.
And it can be expensive, but if everyone, if it becomes a viable option for not just those folks who depend on it and don't have a car, but me, I have a car, but I don't always want to drive around.
Yeah.
And sometimes it could be fun to hop on a trolley and return a bunch of emails before I even get into work.
I used to ride the bus to work when I lived in D.C. It was a 45-minute, if I was lucky, it was a 45-minute ride. And I loved it because I would just sit there and read a book or, listen to some music and just relax.
Little me time, little extra productive time, So, I would like to bring a little bit of that big city feel to Mobile and that option, because I want young people not just enjoying living in Mobile, but wanting to move to Mobile.
Yeah.
Like I see Mobile growing. We are going to continue to produce jobs as long as we can fill them. And we got to make sure we can fill them, and we got to make sure that we're bringing in the best and brightest and connecting those jobs to every neighborhood, not just the ones that are close, not just to the people with cars, but to every neighborhood. And I see public transportation as a real, leveling factor. It really puts everybody on a level playing field, if that is.
I didn't remember that. I don't know that I remembered that study, but I understand now why even Ben has been making some waves lately with the bus situation. When I read some of the information around that, man, that's wild. I hadn't really thought about that.
31%.
Wow.
And not to mention how much cheaper it is to live here. You lower our cost of living, which is already fairly low. It becomes even more attractive.
Yeah, because it gives businesses more runway if they have less expenses like that.
Yeah.
AI. We are, as you would imagine, very deep in AI.
Cool.
And my impression, and a lot of people that I respect their opinions, impression is that the next presidential election is going to be pretty much all about AI, because it's quickly becoming a thing that if you're not paying attention to it, that you're going to have to, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to present the question to you of, what are your views on AI? And then do you have any plans for how you might be able to incorporate that if you were to be elected mayor?
I definitely have plans. To me, one of the lowest hanging fruit options that AI I think could immediately affect is traffic patterns. We've got cameras on almost every one of our traffic signals. If instead of having these predetermined time lights that they're going off no matter whether there's somebody sitting there or not.
I'm just going to stop you right there. We're done. We're just going to elect this man, okay? Golly. I'm telling you what, I can't tell you the people that, it is so frustrating to think, like, if I don't time this just right, it's going to change my trip by like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they have been told to go to Taco Mama on Old Shell, and then it turns out that the people that they were supposed to meet were like over in West Mobile at San Miguel's or something like that.
Yeah.
They got mixed up, and they were like, "Well, just come join us."
There's the Taco Mama in West Mobile too.
Maybe they were there. Yeah, maybe they were there, and they were like, "Well, come join us." And the people at the Taco Mama on Old Shell were like, "I don't think you understand. That's like a 30-minute drive. You'll be done by the time we get there." And it just blows me away that in such a small town, it's not that far. I'm 4 miles from my house here, and it's going to take me 30 minutes to get home.
Pretty crazy.
Part of that's because of McGregor, but we're not even going to go there. But yeah,
December.
Yeah.
I believe. I live very close to McGregor.
Yes.
So. But no, traffic. That's so easy. Like, if I have a live video image, and I've got an AI that can identify the 28 cars that are stopped at that
And
light.
none on either side.
None anywhere else.
Yeah.
I can trigger that light. The AI is going to know, per vehicle, how much time it's going to take to clear that intersection.
Yeah.
Then you can flip it. I sit at a light every single day, getting on the airport, and it doesn't matter if there are 100 cars behind me or 0.
Yeah.
It's going to be a green arrow for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
I've timed it. And I've missed it more times than
And I also think of the Spring Hill Hospital Dothan Island section where, that whole thing. It doesn't matter. You could be there at 1:00 in the morning, and you'll get stopped on Dothan Street. There's nobody, coming, but you'll sit there for 4 or 5 minutes while it changes.
If you drive home or if you drive west on Dolphin Street after it's dark, I think about 7 o'clock. I don't really care how fast you drive or how slow you drive. You're going to catch every red light.
Every red light.
Every time.
Yeah.
At a time where, frankly, they should probably all be flashing.
Yeah.
So,
Because literally nobody else on the road.
some would argue we have too many lights, and some of those people would be right. But no, AI there, I think, is an easy solution. There are a lot of people using it for like communications with City Hall. A lot of cities are exploring that with, text me your questions, where do I go to do this? And AI can really assist with that. I want to see the efficacy
311 is another area that I know a lot of cities that have that type of system.
Yeah.
They use it to kind of either route, answer questions, do things like that.
I really want to bring customer service to the city of Mobile. Like we have it in our shops and our stores, and I got a barbecue place. If you don't have customer service, you don't have customers. And Mobile, I believe, is losing out on customers. When I have builders who don't want to build here because the permitting process is so complicated, that's a huge problem. That's an economic development issue. And so I want to bring customer service to our city services. We have it in a lot of areas. It could be a lot better in others. If AI is going to help with that, I'm sure going to look at it as an option. But traffic, there's some AI modeling out there that can really tell your police when and where to patrol. There's some interesting options out there. I want to vet them. I don't believe immediately because it's AI, it's automatically better.
Right.
But what's happening with AI, I do believe it's going to revolutionize what it means to be a human in this world, and you're going to end up using it one way or another. I think we got to guard against some of the worst potential parts of it. But in the end, it's happening. So we got to be ready for it.
Yeah, there's no putting that cat back in that bag for sure. No, it's just interesting because when you start thinking about the automations that you can, there are a lot of opportunities, there. And I just, even asking, AI, like, hey, how could you help?
Yeah.
You'd be surprised at sometimes what, you get back.
I did have one of my friends text me like a chat GPT response. So it was like, how could AI, no, it's how could AI improve the city of Mobile? And it had some ideas.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting to see how that comes to fruition, because I know, like right now, everybody kind of has their head in the sand in regards to what's going on, and we're paying attention because, just quite honestly, we feel like our jobs are on the tapered end of being automated, right? That at some point in time, advertising is going to become so easy. You're going to put a credit card in, and it's just going to happen, right? I know that it's not imminent, but I'd like to be cognizant of what is happening. But it's also like, can I make my life easier?
Yeah.
Like a lot of this stuff is just a matter of what can we do to process paperwork faster? What can we do to process applications faster?
Yeah. I'm using it right now. We have some Zoom meetings and staff meetings just on the campaign, and it summarizes in bullet points everything that we talk about, and the
action
tasks
items
to
and stuff like
overcome,
that.
action items and blockers, things that are holding us back.
Yeah.
And so like, it's coming. I think it's valuable. It's a valuable tool. It's one that you got to vet. You got to make sure it's going to make things better and not worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's coming.
Well, it's promising. At least you have some ideas, because I to be honest, I don't know that anybody else in the campaign is talking about this. And, it is definitely something that you're going to have to deal with.
Oh yeah. Well, one thing I talk about is, we can talk about the talking points that are facing Mobile right now. Anybody can learn that. Anybody can be taught how to respond to certain things.
Yeah.
We have no idea what the issues that are coming around the corner are. Nobody expected COVID, right? So you need a leader who you can trust to make the good and right decision for the good of everybody, not just themselves. I promise to be that type of leader.
Yeah, that's good.
Always looking for the right decision to do the greatest good for our city.
Yeah. Well, I've mentioned a couple of times I live on McGregor in the construction zone. And
I think I know where you live.
It's the Black House.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. And so, if you bring up any project like this, there's a natural knee-jerk reaction by most of the citizens in the city. And it's not just about the projects taking a long time. It's all the impact that happens around those projects. So, for instance, McGregor closes, and now Landfair is having problems with crime because there are 10 times as amount of traffic going through their neighborhood. And oh, by the way, all the country club roads are probably going to have to be repaved because they weren't used to seeing this much traffic either.
Yep.
And so when you divert traffic off of a major route like Florida Street or McGregor or X, whatever it is, when you divert it for years, it's an issue. And having lived on that street, that project could have been done quicker. No doubt. I'm not going to say that they're doing a horrible job, because I do think that in the end it's going to be unbelievable, right?
Oh, it's going to be great.
I mean, the way that it's shaping up with the lights and the sidewalks and stuff, I really do think that it's going to be an added benefit to the whole community, not just those of us that live on the street, right?
Big roundabout right there, which actually you look at traffic numbers for accidents.
Yeah.
It's going to really improve that intersection. Talking about the disruption that road construction can cause, I think it's always important that you do look at those side effects.
Right.
Yes, we're going to have to repair more roads in the city. We're going to have to replace some failing infrastructure in the city, and it will cause some disruption. We have to minimize that the best we can. And, for my wife, I started work at 9, she did too. We didn't know each other back then. She started as kind of a cashier at the Greers on Florida Street.
Okay.
And they did a complete road project down there that was scheduled to last 8 months. I think it lasted 2.5, 3 years. Mm-hmm. Completely cut off those businesses from their customers.
Yeah.
They did. If they'd have left one lane of travel through that construction, it would have saved that grocery store. I think TP Crockmeyer's had to close down in the same area. And so you got to have somebody in City Hall, somebody looking out for your businesses, your neighborhoods that are going to be affected. I never really understood why they couldn't do this side of the road, let people drive on that one, and then flip once that side's done.
Yeah.
Every road I've ever been down, the asphalt kind of has a line down the middle. Why can't we just do it that way?
Yeah.
I could drive on McGregor before we fixed it. It was, it
was fine,
serviceable.
Yeah. No doubt that it needed to be done. I'm not discouraging it from having taken place, but it just seems like I'm a process guy.
Yeah.
And I'm a project management guy.
Yeah.
And I just, I'm looking at the connections between the handoffs. Hey, we're going to be done with this. And then it's well, the next guy, well, okay, we'll get started, at some point in time. And when you lose not minutes, not hours, not days, but, you lose months or weeks,
years.
It just kind of adds itself to a project. And in this situation, I just I always laugh because, you get fed these videos on YouTube, which is my favorite app of choice. And, it's a bridge in the Netherlands that's being put in over a weekend.
Yeah, overpass in China done in a weekend. I've seen those videos. Yeah, I hear you. And, from on the contract side, mm-hmm. with the construction company that you're working with, you can build in incentives, penalties if timelines aren't met. I do think one of the difficulties we have is Moz is their own entity. Alabama Power is their own entity.
But even
and so if
as
you're waiting,
even there's the problem, because the contractor, I know, because this is how we do it's time and materials, right? And so I'm going to go, well, if they're going to put penalties in there, then I'm going to give myself as much time as I possibly can.
yeah.
And
I
that's
like
how
incentives.
they grow into the time that is allotted for them, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, because like, even like the construction, if you're going to dig a hole to put a gas pipe that's 20 inches, because this is what they did. If you're not familiar, they had to replace the gas pipe going down McGregor that services West Mobile.
Right.
And it's a 20-inch pipe. If you're going to dig a trench for that, well, why don't you just dig the trench a little bit bigger and then have them run all the fiber, all the other stuff down, the other side, if you have to put some sort of barrier between the two because you can't have this next to that or whatever. Like, it just seems like dig once, and then, because I'll tell you what happens is they dig and then they fill in and they pave.
Reason why you can't.
And then they dig and then they come in and they pave and they dig and they pave, and it's like that road has been paved no less than 6 times by now.
You got a front row seat for it, so you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just stuff like that. I don't know that I have no experience in this, but I'm just looking at it going, there's got to be ways to like increase the efficiency of all of this work.
See, now I need you to have a conversation with like a road contractor about that, so I can listen to it and be educated.
Well, I may be full of crap. I don't know. If you're out there and you work at one of these companies that deals with this a lot. Like, give me a holler. I'll take you to lunch. I just want to understand it, because it just doesn't make any sense to me.
You don't want to be messing up the water pipe or the fiber line if you've got to fix something just for the gas line. So maybe there's but it doesn't seem like you would tear up and replace the road 6 times every time that a utility came in and did something. So
the other thing that does too is situations like recently where somebody hit the pipeline. If you've got a way of accessing it, do you really have to dig up, the street again to, anyway, it's just a thought, because I recognize.
I know that one's close to your heart.
Well, it's not even the location, because I really don't care.
Yeah.
It's not that big of an inconvenience other than like, hey, I really wish they wouldn't be out there at, 12 o'clock on Sunday night or something like that, which has only happened like once, so no big deal.
Yeah.
But like, it just feels like there's a way to make that happen faster, and the incentives idea is probably better than the punishment.
I think you tend to get what you want a little better with incentive. I thought about it. You asked a question earlier. Why did you leave a judgeship? And I wanted to say one thing, and that was that. I tell people in my courtroom on a regular basis that I believe the universe talks to us. Mm-hmm. I call him God. You call it whatever you want. And that is truly the reason I left my judgeship, is because I listened and I saw opportunity. And what I love about the universe talking to us is that even if it doesn't work out the way you thought it was going to work out, it will work out for your good.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I felt it necessary to break in and say
that. I do want to encourage you that I think one of the most important aspects to being a leader is that ability to listen. And if you don't have that, if you can't actually hear, not just be quiet, but if you can't hear what the person is saying and also know what they're leaving out, if you can't do that, then you have no business being in leadership.
I will say being a judge is pretty good training for that skill.
Nah. All right. How do you like to unwind?
How do I like to unwind? I love a good walk in the park. I do that pretty regularly. I kind of have a, garage gym that I'll go into by myself and maybe put an action movie on the TV and work out a little bit. I love to fish. I love to hunt. I really just like being outside. I really enjoy hiking. There's some hiking available. We got a good trail out at South Alabama.
Yeah.
But good long extended walks outside, little peace and quiet, little birds singing. little sunshine.
You
on
know,
the
it's
skin.
actually, I have to laugh. I'm bitching about McGregor all this time. We have the most incredible bird population in our backyard right now. And so I'm embarrassed to say this, but we've turned into bird watchers. So we'll sit back there with binoculars and we have hawks. We've seen bald eagles. We've
Yeah.
seen owls. I was laying in the on our patio in one of the chairs, just watching all the birds, and this hawk circled by and then came probably 30 feet above me and landed in a tree, not too far. And I tell you, man, it's impressive. It really is.
I'm going to nerd out real quick.
Sure.
Cornell has an app, the University of Cornell, and it will identify birds by their song.
Okay, and do you know the name of the app?
If you'll just type in Cornell and bird,
I'll
you'll
have to
find
figure
it.
yeah. Because I am horrible at identifying birds.
Yeah, I'm not full on bird watcher. My in-laws are, in fact, full on bird watchers. Never thought that was something I would be into. I'll tell you that. But it happens.
Any other hobbies or besides?
I play golf really poorly. I enjoy it. I have a fun time, but I just don't have the time it takes to be good at golf. I like pickleball. I love pickleball, actually. I rarely get to play it.
I've never played.
Oh, it's fun.
Is it?
It's really fun. Yeah.
That's cool.
Lucy loves it, right? And she'll get fully into something sometimes, and we got fully into pickleball. Her best friend was playing it. We played it like 10 times over one weekend, and she was hooked.
Yeah.
To the point where she was ready to try and open up a pickleball court. And thankfully, the city's invested a lot into the infrastructure for that. But no, and then of course, we have 4 kids and a bunch of work,
busy.
and we're busy. But I really like pickleball. I generally like sports. Sports are about the only way I can make myself run and actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's an interesting sport to me, and I don't know. I listen to podcasts, and there's somebody. Is it Andrew Schultz, the comedian, who has just come out recently? Is like he's a diehard pickleball fan.
It's that fun,
and it's just wild to me because it's something that I hadn't seen before, and so I'll have to give it a shot.
I know Schultz. I don't know that I've heard him talk about that.
Yeah.
But you should try it. We should go play. I will beat the crap out of you.
I'm down to be flogged. So. All right, I got 12 rapid fire questions. So just off the top of your head, favorite type of music?
Oof, jazz.
Okay. What's your favorite type of food?
Greek.
Favorite restaurant in Lower Alabama?
I should say Lucy's, but favorite restaurant in Lower Alabama is definitely Pig Out Barbecue in Dothan, Alabama.
Okay. Pig Out. I'm gonna have to remember that because I want to try that now.
Yeah, you should.
Favorite city outside of Mobile?
I really like Chicago. I really vibe with Chicago.
It's the
I've got
pizza.
some friends
Don't
that
lie.
live there. The pizza's, I am a pizza man. I probably could live off of it alone, but I don't know. It's a little thick for me, a little heavy on me. But no, you got the Cubbies, you got the White Sox. They have great public transportation.
It's true.
You got
There's
the
a lot to do.
architectural boat tour, a lot of history.
Yeah.
A lot of nightlife. It's a
fun city.
It's a fun city.
Yeah. City you want to travel to but have yet to visit?
Lots. A lot. Let's see. Key West.
Very cool. What comes to mind when I say guilty pleasure?
Probably Sour Patch Kids.
Okay. That's a good one. Dogs, cats, or none of the above?
All of the above, but no cats inside the house.
Okay. Summer or winter?
Summer.
Favorite movie or TV show?
That is too hard. Oh, Seinfeld growing up for sure.
Okay. I was Friends, but I get it. Favorite holiday? Don't say Christmas. Everybody says Christmas.
Yeah, no, I think it probably is. It probably is Thanksgiving. It's kind of like all that family time. It is
together.
the beginning of deer season.
Yeah.
But yeah, like all getting together just to be together and have a nice meal and be thankful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Thanksgiving.
Good stuff. Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite cereal?
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
There you go. See, now we're talking.
Yeah.
I knew I liked you. And what are you most thankful for?
Oh man, so much. So much. Certainly my family. You know, I have such a beautiful, wonderful family that, you know, everything I do is because of them. It's for them. You know, truly, I've been blessed. You know, I will say the blessings of God. You know, God has blessed my life in so many ways. Doesn't mean I haven't struggled and had many difficulties. I have. But yeah, my family, my kids, my beautiful wife, that I am very thankful.
That's an amazing answer. And I'm struck when, as you're saying that is that not the answer to a lot of the problems that we have too, is the strengthening of the family and the increasing of that bond that people have with their own kin.
You know, I love the message of Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, have no other God before me, and love your neighbor, and everything else takes care of itself. And what I think we have a problem with is loving our neighbors. If we did a lot more loving our neighbor and truly hoping and wanting the best for them and helping where we can and never hindering their progress, this world would look so much better. We would have a lot less of the things we want a lot less of. So yeah, love your neighbor.
Cool. Well, tell people where they can find out more information if they want to learn more about the campaign.
SpiroForMayor.com. We're on the Facebook. We're on Instagram. My interns created a TikTok the other day.
What is this TikTok?
Oh my gosh, yeah, I don't know. I hear it's bad, but I think it's pretty cool. So you know, interns, the number 4 Spiro on
That's awesome.
TikTok. Yeah, where else? Email me at spiroformayor.com. Yeah, please check us out, look into us, and let us know what we can do to make this city better.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on the podcast. Any final thoughts or comments you'd like to share?
I just appreciate what you're doing here. I appreciate the time. You know, just keep spreading positivity. It's a lot easier to be negative. You know, I think a lot of people don't want to take the energy it takes to be positive and see the positive in things. And if you can see the positive in problems, your life's going to look a lot better.
Yeah.
It's going to appear a lot better. Your perception of things will change completely.
It's amazing what you can manifest when you change the angle that you come at things, right?
I'm telling you, see opportunities.
Yeah. Well, Spiro, I appreciate your willingness to sit with me and share this journey, and also just tell us a little bit about what you plan on, you know, doing with our city if elected mayor. So I really do appreciate your
time.
This
was such a joy. We should just do this like once a week. Great.
On next time we'll do it on the pickleball court. How about that?
Yeah, all right. I'll get a good sweatband
there
going.
You go.
Ready to rock.
Pull up the
gotta get them high.
The striped socks and
gotta
stuff.
Get them high.
Anyway, I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Marcus.